Hello, everybody. As I mentioned on Twitter, I'm going to be trying something a little different with my YouTube stuff. I'm going to try to talk about musical albums and provide reviews for those, in addition to doing movie reviews and guitar covers. What I want to do is I want to do each week I switch between one week I'll do a album review, then a movie review, and just kind of flip flop back and forth because I was getting a little bored of the repetition. And my friend Zach Keller kind of suggested I should review music stuff as well since I am a music guy. So this is probably going to come as a surprise to a lot of people because I'm about to give a positive review to one Taylor Swift. Now, for those of you who are watching and don't know, you would probably be thinking, well, why not? She's awesome. But I think for those of you who know me for a while, I think you've known with that I am not the hugest Taylor Swift fan. And I'm going to address that before I get into the review proper. Now, when I first heard Taylor Swift's music, I was about 13, 14 years old. And this would have been in like 2008, 2000. Yeah, it was like 2008 or something. And I remember basically her first three albums with Fearless, her self-titled debut album, and her third album, Speak Now. I really liked her sound. I thought it had a lot of sincerity, heart, and just a very genuine sense of her being raw and real with her fans through her music and the songwriting. But then somewhere after her third album between 2011 and 2012, she kind of went into the more dance pop route. The music seemed more corporate, packaged, artificial, and just, you know, it seemed like everything that Taylor Swift wasn't at first. It felt like basically from 2011 through 2019, while she was making a lot of hits, it seemed like she was more focusing on sucking up to the top 40 listeners rather than explore more creative realms. And that I found really frustrating because I saw her as this very talented poet, and she was throwing that away to be a crowd pleaser. So that was the reason why I really didn't like her music. And I just felt like she was overrated. I felt like there are other female artists out there that were a little before Taylor's time that were much better than her music throughout the entire career compared to that span. Yeah, I'm Mary Chapin Carpenter came to mind. Pat Benatar, the sisters behind Heart. There are a lot of great female artists out there. I just felt like Taylor was selling herself short to make hits. But then Folklore came along, and I'd heard about the album about, let's see, it's the today is the 31st, so I heard about this album about a week ago when it got released out of nowhere, and I gave it a shot because I saw some positive reviews about about the album. Almost said film, sorry, Forza Habit. So I got interested in giving this album a listen to give it a fair shake, and I went in it with a very wide open mind. And with that out of the way, what I would say about this album is that, much like what I was saying before, where Taylor was not using her creative skills to their full potential, this one she was way closer to maturing her sound than she was in years past. You know? And the first three albums, that's fine. You're young, you're new, you're still trying to find your voice out there, that's fine. But I felt like in between album three and the seventh, I believe Folklore is her seventh album. But between album three and seven, there was this huge gap of throwing that aside for fun pop tunes that really don't mean much. And honestly, I felt like this was a point where Taylor started to mature the sound. She was starting to talk about stuff that was not necessarily the cookie cutter, I love my boyfriend or I hate my boyfriend's guts, you know? It was talking about like one song is about a love triangle between Taylor and a friend, affairs, family names that come and go, um, trying to be a young person in a society that automatically thinks if you're young, you're stupid. So there were a lot of other themes that I never really heard Taylor cover that much. And the way I would describe this album, I mentioned artists like Mary Chapin Carpenter. This album is kind of like Mary Chapin Carpenter with a more pop, pop, folk rock kind of edge to it. Because Taylor had started off as a country artist, but then she started to go for more pop and rock kind of elements. And this is kind of where this comes back into play once again. And really, there's not a whole lot of synthesizers or artificial music being pumped into the background. It feels a little more stripped down and bare bones compared to some of her earlier efforts of the previous decade. And I also think that another thing that I really like about this album is the music videos that they produced for it. I think the one for Cardigan, where she's in a wooden cabin, goes into a piano bench, and then comes out into a forest. It's kind of like this beautiful Mother Earth kind of thing. So it's very beautiful. Um, Another thing I would say is that I do feel like my one major complaint with this album, and sadly it's a big flaw. It doesn't kill the album, but I feel like the songwriting from a lyrical standpoint still falls into the same trap of rhyming every other sentence with every other verse and chorus. I personally think that's just lazy songwriting. It's kind of like when you read a screenplay to a movie and they keep inserting cliche after cliche after cliche and they're not doing anything with it. They're just doing it there for convenience. Um, Aside from that, I think this was a very solid album and a return to form for Taylor Swift. So I really do like this album, and I think I'm really curious to see what's coming next, because I feel like if this album was going to get a perfect rating from me, the songwriting would have had to have been lyrically, the songwriting would have had to have been more clever and more creative, and it is. It just falls back into the trap of have to rhyme every other sentence, which that really annoys the hell out of me when that happens. Um, but overall, I was not really expecting this album to be great, but it it was really good. You know, I think if it wanted to be a perfect follow up to Lover from 1999, I think it would have had to have try a little harder, maybe try to be a little more ambitious in terms of making the songs longer and more cleverly written. But I feel like when I say this stuff, I feel like that teacher who's giving a student a minus or an A on a long 10-page thesis, and yet I'm still finding nitpicky things to bitch about. Nitpicky things that are kind of significant, but at the end of the day, the kid got an A minus, A plus, or an A minus. I mean, the kid got an A minus and an A. So if you're gonna bitch about someone getting a 90 to a 95% on a test or paper, that's a little ridiculous, you know. But all in all, I'm really curious to see what Taylor does as a follow up. I'm not really sure if she's busy recording any other music or she have anything else in mind, but I think given the pandemic and everything that's going on, this is probably going to be something really good to tide us music fans over for a while. So I would say give it a listen, but I'm pretty sure based on the fact that it sold over 1 million copies within the first couple of days of release, I get the feeling it's probably been listened to by everyone on the planet already. So great album. Can't wait to see the follow up. And she's back, baby. Anyway, so Monday, I will be doing my guitar cover for the Bruce Springsteen song "I Want to Marry You," and I will also finish off my Star Wars Skywalker Saga reviews with the Rise of Skywalker next Friday, and that review is not going to be as friendly or flattering as this video was. So That's all I gotta say, and I will see you guys Monday. Take care.